Albie.
Hello.
Thank you so much for joining me.
My
how
pleasure.
are you finding your new role as being part of the broadcast team in Formula E?
So it's been super interesting. It's completely different than what I've been doing, obviously as a trackside race engineer, chief engineer. I'm learning a lot about the world of broadcast, about the world of digital, and the various teams that sort of make this all happen. It feels a little bit magical, to be honest. There's so many different things going on, but I'm learning a lot and enjoying a lot.
Good, I'm really glad. So you were a race engineer for a really large majority of your career up until now. Can you just explain, because I'm sure there's loads of budding young engineers out there. How did that come about? How did that start?
So so my origin story is a little bit different. So classically, I'm trained as an aerodynamicist. I did my university degree and my master's degree back in California at UCLA and then at Stanford. And realistically, I worked for about a year and a half in aerospace out in America, and I just didn't really enjoy it as much. The product cycles are very long. It wasn't super exciting. So I decided to go to the UK and pursue motorsport because there's a lot of the skill set from an aerospace engineering point of view to motorsport. You know, you've got aerodynamics, you've got lightweight structures, systems engineering. There's a whole lot of things that are transferable over. And I ended up in the UK. I want to do motorsport because, you know, you got to be in the UK if you want to do motorsport. It's like going to Hollywood for an actor, right? So that's kind of what I did. And I did another master's degree at Brunel University. And while I was there, I met a lot of teams, and sort of one thing led to another. And I latched on with a touring car team, British touring car team, West Surrey Racing. And I was there for about 6 years. And I started out as a data engineer, and that's usually like the first port of call. I think for a student or for a young graduate. And it was interesting. We're also doing A1GP at the same time as British touring cars. And it was one of these races in that second season where the race engineer couldn't make it out to Shanghai. That was where we were. And they sort of threw me the clipboard and they said, you know, you're gonna have to run the car, Albie. And I was like, wow, okay. I was super scared the first day. But you know, you just gotta do it. You gotta go for it, right? And I did a good enough job where they let me then run touring car the year after that. And so even for my second full year in motorsport, I was already race engineering. So that was really cool. And I just did that for a really long time. So
can you explain what goes in a day-to-day, so say when you're on track and so forth, when you're working a team, what does the race engineer do? I know obviously they're pivotal, like really just go into depth of what they do and at the track and I suppose a little bit at the factory as well.
Yeah, I mean, for me, race engineering really starts at the factory. Everything is in preparation for the race weekend. That's where if you're doing sort of simulator work, you're doing pre-event work with the other engineers to look at simulation, look at historical results, what we sort of expect the race weekend to look like. So there's all of that work from a setup point of view, writing your run plan for the session for the weekend, and all of that preparation then feeds into the race weekend. And then during the race weekend, as a race engineer, it's sort of like a management position for your particular car and driver, and you're just executing during the race weekend what you've sort of planned to do. So whether that's making sure all the engineers and mechanics have the right information they need to go through the various sessions, job lists, setup changes. What are we going to do during the session? Are we going to do practice pit stop? Are we doing practice starts? All of that you've already prepped at the factory ahead of time. So by the time you get to the weekend, it's just execution of the sessions themselves. And then obviously working with the driver and the other engineers to make sure you extract maximum performance out of the learnings that you take during free practice, applying them for qualifying, applying them for the race, and then again, it's just executing that race weekend.
Yeah, and then obviously you were the race engineer for Nyck de Vries and his championship run. Obviously that was quite a crazy season. We had so many people going into the final race, a chance to be a champion. What was pivotal in that season in securing Nyck that championship, and then obviously the Mercedes team championship as well? Like, what was consistency? I said at that time was really big in Formula E. Was it just down to consistency, or like was it something else?
Yeah, God, that feels like a long time ago now. That feels like a long time ago. But no, we had a very good power unit in the Mercedes powertrain there, so that obviously was very efficient in what it was doing. I think from a software point of view, we were good, maybe not exceptional, but like you said, consistency. We were able to go into every race weekend with a process in place for what we're going to do during the race weekend, executed really well. From an operational point of view, the whole team, operation excellence was one of our mantras, and that was one thing that we did, I think, better than everyone else. And during that race, again, just having that consistency, and Nyck made the most of it when things fell our way and minimized the issues when things didn't go your way. And you kind of need to have that in a championship winning season. So all of that put together, ended up we were in a position in the final race to then take advantage of other people having this fortune and just doing a good job ourselves.
Yeah, you said there it was quite interesting about the software not being one of the best, because obviously the 2-year cycle is quite locked in, so software is all you can sort of to develop. How hard is it? What goes into software development? How much are you as a race engineer at that time really working with the mechanics to try and develop the software, because that's what you can do because the hardware's stuck?
Yeah, exactly. So software development is the hallmark of any sort of Formula E manufacturer team. Understanding the software, how you feed the driver feedback and the engineering feedback into that development process to then add things onto the car, whether that's energy management, control systems, what you show the driver on the dash, the cues you're giving the driver. And it's not to say that I think when we won it, we didn't have, it's not like we had bad software. I just think that we probably, knowing what I know now in the seasons afterwards, there was definitely more potential we could have had, but it was very good in that it allowed us consistency, and we calibrated the systems within the car to give the driver a consistent car rather than chasing that like sort of last little detail, which sometimes you can get a little bit lost in FE because you've got so few laps during free practice. You try to dial everything so that the car is absolutely perfect, but then the track changes a little bit, gets a little bit warmer, the tires get a little bit hotter than you expected, and all of a sudden all the work you did to try to find that last little bit of detail then doesn't pay off, and you were probably better off just having something more consistent, like a 95% solution rather than like 100 that tips over into 101 easily. And I think that's kind of like, again, that was part of our hallmark and sort of what we tried to do with the car.
Is that why the simulations then come into real, like in the factories, like make sure all those software settings are, everything that's developed is super important and it gets sorted out in the simulations? Yeah,
so in terms of like the work you do in the sim, it's super important. The offline simulations you run as well. Again, you want to cover as many of the different variables as you think can happen. And then after that, you then test it in the simulator. Okay, out of the 10 things that I want to try in offline simulation, right, these 3 look promising, I'm going to try these 3 in the simulator, gather the data from that with the real driver in loop, and then at the race weekend, okay, that's what we're doing. These are the 2 things we want to go try. So that whole process takes a lot of work. There's a lot of engineering that goes behind it, but it's just making sure that, right, all the things and eventualities that I think could happen at the track, we've at least done some work on it, and then the things that we think are more likely to happen, if I think the track is going to be roughly 40 degrees during qualifying, but okay, let's make sure we do the work if it's 30. Make sure we've done the work if it's 25, just in case, you never know. And then you spend more time, okay, it's mainly going to be 35, 40 degrees in that window. I'll spend more of my preparation time around that. But the odd thing happens where you've got a weather front that you didn't realize was coming in, and all of a sudden the race weekend is 25 degrees track temp. Then you've got that data that you've already worked on before. And you can dust that off and be like, okay, right, we didn't spend as much time on it as possible, but at least we've done something rather than having done nothing.
So we really want to do a little bit of a deep dive into the strategy elements, because I think that's the most interesting thing, especially with the Gen 3 car with the pack racing. So how does one go about a strategy for pack racing? Because it seems like it's ever changing. Like how do you start off the process thinking, right, this is going to be a pack race? This is my strategy. Like, we know when you have Formula 1, we've got like A, B, C, D. Like, I feel like in Formula
like
1, you could have like Z.
No, so basically there's so many different elements that come into preparing a race strategy, in terms of you need to look at historical data if you have some. If you're at a new track, obviously that's a little bit harder. You do a lot of work in the simulator running through the energy usage and lap time. You then look at how you want to deploy that energy over a lap in different corners, different straights and things like that. So again, all of that feeds into the race strategy. You also know that when you classify the circuits, again, a lot of this is based on what the FIA tell you in terms of number of laps that you're going to be doing at that circuit, and then the geometry of the circuit will give you an indication whether it's energy sensitive or not. How much liftoff are you going to have on a normal lap? And if you place that information, you can kind of classify the tracks where you're like, right, most likely the lifting zones are so short that you're probably not going to have a lot of overtaking because they're shorter. And all of these sort of things feed into like, right, this type of circuit is probably not going to be that pack racy because everyone's pushing pretty hard.
Yeah.
These are really high speed circuits where there's a lot of penalty for being at the front and taking the drag of the car because it's as speed squared. So like those kind of things where you're like, okay, if it's track there, you may have a little bit more pack racing because the drivers at the front aren't going to want to expend that energy leading the pack, right?
Yeah.
So looking at that sort of data ahead of time will tell you, right, this is going to be, expect more of a pack race. This is maybe not going to be as big of an issue. So that gives you a first indication. Once you get your grid from qualifying, you kind of also tie yourself into, right, I'm sort of at mid-pack to back of the end, I'm back of the pack, I need to be saving energy, I'm going to have a good toe because I've got all these cars in front of me, so I can save a lot back there. And again, you have different kind of strategies depending on whether you're leading at the front, in the middle, or the back. And depending on what type of race it is, sometimes actually you're at the back, it's still okay because I know that I can still win a race from back there. Yeah. Some other tracks you're like, right, I need to be in the front 3 rows because if I don't have that track position, to make up that track position during the race is going to be difficult, you know? So things like, when am I going to take attack mode? Whether it's a pit boost race or not, can I use clean air? How much difference do I make from all-wheel drive 350 compared to 300 rear-wheel drive, attack, non-attack? And that delta in performance will again give you an indication, right? In a 4-minute attack mode, 6-minute attack mode, how much can I actually overtake? What is actually possible, right? Yeah. And then from there on out, you kind of see where your driver is during the race, and you can deploy different strategies. And again, you've discussed this with the driver ahead of time, so it's not like one strategy fits all. It is during the race, the driver's giving the call outs to the team. The team knows where the car balance is. They know how much energy is left in the car, what the driver's doing, driver subjective feedback, oh, I feel pretty good, car's strong, car's not so strong, and that feeds into that strategic discussion of right, when do we take attack mode, when do we take pit boost? So again, prep, massively important, but don't be so locked into one strategy where you're not able to pivot.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say, because obviously surely during the race there must be like loads of opportunities where you're like, okay, we have to try this idea, or maybe we have to look at this idea now because, you know, you thought you might be 8th, for example, if you had a bad qualifying, but you're only 14th or something like that. So when you're in those situations, how important is it to be fluid and to discuss all eventualities?
It's super important to be fluid, and again, it's important to have had these discussions with the drivers, with the engineers ahead of time. The strategy briefing before the race is super important because you've discussed all of these topics. Like, right, we're starting from 5th, but what are you going to do if we drop down to 14th because you've been pushed out on the first corner? What happens if actually there's been a shunt in front of it, all of a sudden you're leading the race? So like, if you've not had those discussions beforehand, you're not going to know what to do. The driver's not going to know what to do. And then you're flapping during the race, right? So again, having those discussions ahead of time, make sure you're fluid and able to have that discussion with the driver as well, because the successful drivers are the ones that understand the racing. They've got a lot of mental capacity while they're racing out there to understand, right, is my car strong enough? How do we look on energy compared to the other cars? How do I feel from a car dynamics point of view, car balance point of view? Do we actually have a better car than them? Are my lifting points earlier or later than them? So that is the thinking driver's key to understanding and then feeding back to the team. Actually, we've got an opportunity here, or like that, you know what, we should maybe just hold fire a little bit, and that feeds into that discussion.
It sounds like there's a lot of hours that goes into.
There's a lot of prep. There's a lot
of hours. Like every stone is like not left uncovered, basically.
Absolutely. I mean, the engineers spend so much time in between races, just going back on the simulator. I mean, most teams will do 3-4 days in the simulator between races, and if you have like a 2-week gap, you got to think, you know, you're flying back internationally, you're back on a Monday, back in the simulator on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and that next weekend you're probably flying back out on a Monday. So it's like, it's continuous.
Talk to me about the energy reveal. How does that change the race? Because obviously you know your energy, but you don't know the other team's energies. So when the energy reveal comes up, does that go, oh my God, right, we need to make a change here?
It can be quite surprising sometimes. No, it can definitely be quite surprising. I think now for Gen 3 Evo, you've had 4 years with these regulations. Everyone's kind of converged to like a solution that's very, very close, very similar, right? So when you see the energy come up on the TV, it's not as surprising as maybe it used to be. but the teams are sort of tracking each other's GPS data, so they have an idea of sort of where they stand. But yeah, for sure, once you get that number, you know. And within the manufacturer, so depending on how much data they share, you may already have data from 4 cars, your 2 cars, and your 2 sister cars at the manufacturer or customer, whichever way it is. So again, you have an idea.
Yeah, and then talk to me about how PitBoost has completely changed the strategy. So now obviously, you know, how different are the PitBoost races to the pack style of races in terms of a strategy element?
Yeah, so with the PitBoost race is really interesting in that it gives you a chance to be offset with everybody else, and it allows you to be in clean air. That is massive, right?
Yeah.
To be in clean air and maximize that potential without being pace limited in front of you can make or break a race, right? So if you're leading the race and you're going to pit later, you already have the benefit of clean air.
Yeah.
So, but if you're at the back and you're one of the first to take pit boost and you come back out, you got a clear road ahead of you, then you need to make the lap time. You should be taking attack mode, you should be pushing ahead, you should be spending energy. So making sure that you have clean air, but that you maximize its potential. So like in the last race you saw with Pascal Wehrlein, he came back out, he was late to stop. When he came back, he was just ahead of the other group, and he was able to take his attack mode and then just do lap times, and then he was like, you know, a minute up the road. It was 30 seconds up the road. It was a master class of sort of how you use that.
Yeah.
But some other teams, when they came back in, maybe they didn't deploy enough energy and make use of that free air, and that's where you can sometimes get lost. It's always difficult to know how much energy you can use and get away with, so that by the end of the race, you don't like run out. It's not necessarily run out, but you could pace limit yourself by not having as much energy as everybody else.
Yeah.
Right. So again, a little cat and mouse there.
Yeah, because Van Dorn did something interesting in Tokyo, didn't he? So I don't know how much you recall, but like he apparently underfueled or didn't have enough, way less energy, so he could take the pit boost earlier. And obviously they gambled on the safety car or the full course yellow, which came out, which enabled them to win the race.
So they were the only ones to stop with, and under those conditions, everybody else couldn't because they still had energy. They were outside the window, and then everybody else had to take a stop during green flag conditions, whereas Stoff did a stop under safety car. So basically, it was an easy win for him. Yeah. But again, some of those outside the box solutions sometimes can work, but again, you're gambling on something that you don't know if it's 100% going to happen. But if you're just kind of at the back, sometimes, you know, you just have to gamble and throw the dice. Yeah. Did that happen? Do those types of ideas happen quite frequently? Do you always have an outside the box plan, or is it normally always outside the box? So you always have, just because of how close the racing is and how close the cars are, you always have to have a race from the back solution. So I always used to call it the race from the back playbook. Yeah. And it's like, right, I've lost the front wing, I've had to come in, or I've had a puncture, and I can get back out. I'm on the lead lap, but I'm 30 seconds behind. Yeah. So I'm going to save energy like mad, do the maximum I can to stay on the lead lap and have enough of a gap where I've saved as much energy as possible, and then you're just waiting for the safety car or the red flag. And when that comes out, it's like, it's like winning the lottery. Yeah. How much do you look, because Nyck Cassidy, we call Nyck Cassidy like the master of the peloton type races, because he would be at the back saving energy, and all of a sudden, even this season, when he got his P3 and he managed to get all the way through, so do you keep an eye on other teams and we know Cassidy's really good at this, or we know this driver's really good at this, so we need to, during the race, you need to watch them and see what they're doing? Yeah, I mean, ultimately you're kind of focused on your own race and your own strategy, but you have a very good understanding of your competition. Nyck is one of these drivers that sees the race really well. He understands the subtleties of he's got a lot of mental capacity in there because the pace is always there with him, but ahead of that, he's also got a lot of mental capacity to read the race. Like Ollie Rowland's another one of those, DaCosta is one of those, and they are able to drive the car quickly, but at the same time able to process, right, where are we strong, where are we weak, actually, when is the right time to take this attack mode? And they have to work with the teams and the strategy engineers and the race engineers, but those drivers, like, if you had no support for them at all, they would still probably do just that well, because they just have an inherent, they've been in the championship long enough, they understand and they feel the race cars and the potential, and they understand what they can get away with energy-wise, what they can't get away with, and timing that release of, so I call it an inflection point. So if there's a bit of reduced pace where everything's slowing down, and then you've got an inflection point where the pace backs up, pace picks back up, that's the bit that timing that so that you go earlier than everybody else you've made up the lap time, you've made up the track position, and on top of that, by the end, you're not only in the lead or on the podium, but you have enough left over to hold everyone off because you know the pace is going to be so high that actually, even if they use more energy, they can't overtake you anyways because the pace is, you've got this shape. If the pace is so high now, all of a sudden, to be able to overtake is a lot harder. Whereas where Cassidy's done it at the bottom of the inflection here, he knows that he can spend this amount of energy and gain 7 places. If he spends the same amount of energy later in the race, the pace is so high, he can still spend that energy, but he'll gain maybe 1 or 2 positions. And reading that subtlety in that shape of race is what those drivers are extremely good at.
Yeah, and then finally for me, obviously, we're going into a new era next season with Gen 4. So a potentially new type of racing. We don't know obviously what type of racing that we're going to get, but fingers crossed, I think the fans probably don't want to see as much of the pack racing. They kind of want to see the old-fashioned overtakes. What are you thinking for hearing from Gen 4? What type of racing do you think we might be treated to next year?
I'm not sure how much I can say. No, I just I've had a few conversations with James Rossiter, who's been doing a lot of the development for the Gen 4 sporting side, and it's going to be exciting. It's going to be really exciting. The car performance level is taking such a big step. We saw from Gen 1 to Gen 2 was already a massive step, going from 2 cars to 1 car.
Yeah.
Gen 2 to Gen 3, you added so much efficiency to the car by having the FBK and being able to regen from the front axle. And now to then take another step in performance from an overall car potential point of view is super exciting, and I can't wait for it, to be honest.
Yeah, nor can we, to be honest with you. Albie, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much.
No worries. Thank you very much for having me.